Hello, everybody. I'm David, he's Bowser, and we are here to talk Australian Grand Prix. Bowser, do you want to take us through the qualifying before we get into the
I'd
nitty gritty?
love to. I'd love to, Ames. I'd love to. Right, so we'd have to start with 19th place because, unlike usual, there wasn't 20 drivers taking part in qualifying. The missing driver on this occasion, Logan Sargent. You might have heard Alex Albon was using his car because Alex Albon was in a crash in FP1. So he damaged the car beyond repair, and Williams didn't have a second chassis for him. So we will cover this a little bit later, go into a bit more detail. But for now, there is no 20th position. We go from Zhou finishing 19th on the grids, and then quickly going up, we've got Ricardo, Gasly, and Hulkenberg finishing off in Q3. 15th place taken by Ocon. Magnussen making it into Q2 in 14th. Bottas heavily out-qualifying his teammate in 13th. Alex Albon getting that sole remaining Williams up into 12th. Then you've got probably the first of the real big shockers, Lewis Hamilton getting knocked out in Q2, starting 11th on the grid. You've got Q3 now, Alonso starting in 10th, out-qualified by Lance Stroll, who started 9th. Yuki Tsunoda, again, heavily out-qualifying his teammate, up in 8th place. Really good effort from him. Russell consistently doing well now in comparison to where the Mercedes are at the moment, in 7th. Piastri, the first of the McLarens, in 6th. And you've got Leclerc in 5th. Norris in 4th. Perez in 3rd. And returning from his little absence after the surgery that he had last couple of weekends ago, Carlos Sainz putting it all the way up on the front row in 2nd place, and our usual placeholder of number 1, Max Verstappen.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much, buddy. Running through it as class as always. Yeah, right. Well, let's move on to the Grand Prix, and seeing as we don't have a 20th place car, let's discuss what happened with Logan Sargent to begin with, shall we? Yeah, poor guy, can't catch a break really, can he? He doesn't even crash his car and his car gets taken away from him. Seems a bit harsh in my opinion. But I get why they've done it, because Albon probably is the driver most likely to get them points there. But yeah, very harsh on him, and a very embarrassing situation for Williams that by the third race in the season they didn't have a spare chassis still. So yeah, not good. Doesn't sound good for them at any rate.
It's a difficult one. I think if we both had both, if we were in James Vowles' situation, I think everyone would have made the same choice. It's a harsh choice. It is, like, no doubt about it. But in the situation he was in the nicest possible way, it was a no-brainer. It is very harsh. Like I said, Logan did nothing wrong. Alex was the one that crashed, and Alex got to carry on. So, strike down for Alex on that one. We're very complimentary of Alex on this channel, as a general rule. But we've got to be fair. When someone has a howler, they have a howler, and
Absolutely.
they would have gone into the weekend knowing they didn't have a spare chassis. That would have been sort of common knowledge throughout the team, even though not up the grid. So yeah, like I said, it's a shame, like, gutting for Logan, feel bad for him. Alex, trying to get the most out of that car. Clearly, they was having to push too hard to try and get the maximum out of it. Could cause the issue. But I think the main issue here definitely is the fact that Williams seems like they've really pushed their resources to the max over the winter, which normally would be a good thing in the sense of, they've really maximised the opportunity, but they've come out arguably with a worse car than they did at this time last year in comparison to the rest of the field. So it's a tricky start to the season for Williams, and we, as two fans of Williams here, I'm sure you'd echo that we want to see him improving very quickly.
Absolutely, yeah. I've got my Williams shirt on pre-order for this season.
Oh dear.
So
Oh dear.
it's not going well for them, for me at any rate. Maybe I've cursed them,
Ew.
but yeah, you have to question why Alex Albon was trying to go that hard that early on in the weekend as well, especially knowing they only have one chassis and on the corner that last year he binned it as well. So yeah,
Mhm.
I think that is a mistake from Alex. It does need to be called up. It's not something we're used to seeing from him, but he took on the responsibility after he was given Logan's car, and we'll get to him later on. But for now, let's go from 19th place, and I'm going to enjoy saying this one. In
Oh,
19th
hang on.
place,
Ooh,
it's Max Verstappen.
stop it!
I know. I think every single person in the world rejoiced when they saw him dropping down the grid, apart from one nation in Europe.
Yeah.
But yeah, brake failure. From what I've seen from the interviews, it says, or Max Verstappen said that the brake was stuck on from the start, which is actually a little bit ominous if you think about that, because they still didn't pass him that quickly with a brake stuck on. So if that is true, then that's still quite ominous for the rest of the
It's a bit
season.
scary, isn't it?
Yeah, but did that explode spectacularly in the pit lane? I mean, Jesus, that was pretty lethal. But
I did
yeah,
think he was actually quite lucky that he exploded as he was going between the walls on the entrance to the pit lane, rather than when he was down the pit lane, and like that cut a shot right out to the side, out of the wheel drum.
that would have been
And
like a shotgun going off next to
yeah,
someone. It would have been
and if
lethal.
it like got to the point where he was driving down towards the teams and going past the pit boxes, that could have easily gone in the garage. So
That could have caused
yeah,
him serious
scary,
injuries. So actually, I think Red
scary.
Bull got away with one there.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice to see though that they can have mistakes. So maybe he won't win every race this season. Well, I mean, he already
definitely
hasn't,
won't.
but you know what I mean, every other race this season,
Yeah.
maybe there'll still be something to go wrong for him. But yeah, interesting times and very exciting for all of us. Long may it continue.
Yes. It's a tricky one because you don't. It's not something you really want to see. Like we all want to see Max Verstappen getting beaten, but we want to arguably see it on the track. This is kind of a hollow victory in this.
Like a Fight Club.
Yeah. Do it in the ring. No, it's It would be much more satisfying, I think, if it wasn't a mechanical issue. But he's had his fair. Yeah, at this point, absolutely. And to be fair, like the last time he DNF'd because of a mechanical issue was Australia 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So he's had a pretty lucky run of it compared to a lot of the other drivers on the grid. So he was probably due one. The car, what goes around comes around. So he's had 2 very good seasons of reliability. So if there's any more throughout the season to make it interesting, the Ferraris seem very close. Surprisingly close, a lot closer than last year. We're probably back to the gap that there was around sort of 2022 kind of time.
You mean like
that
the
kind
latter
of
half of 22, where Red Bull had got a bit ahead? Because obviously, I don't think that anyone's under the impression that Ferrari are going to be taking a race win off of them in a normal racing situation.
No.
But
no.
They are certainly closing that gap, and they're the only team that seems to be really doing that.
That's the thing. It seems to definitely be back to at one point towards the end of that season, Mercedes looked like they were starting to make a move into that top region. McLaren obviously made massive jumps last year to try and put themselves into the conversation of getting regular podiums and pushing them for a win. Carlos Sainz obviously doing it in Singapore as well, but again that was something weird with the Red Bulls on that track for some reason. But either way, it at least it's better than last year in the sense of at least it looks semi-competitive, and we'll talk about it a bit when we get up to the top of the grid with sort of Perez and Leclerc and Sainz. But yeah, it's nice to see that they're not bulletproof like they were pretty much last year. Well, they were last year. So yeah, that's a good start. Good start.
Good start, and hopefully we see more errors and issues as the season goes on. Bring us to number 18th next, though, which is Lewis Hamilton, who had a horrible weekend. Mercedes trying some setup experiments that just he never liked, and then he was just all out of sorts. Missed out on the top 10 in qualifying. I cannot remember the last time Lewis Hamilton didn't make the top 10 in qualifying. That is the state of this current Mercedes car. He probably can't wait to get out of it, to be honest at the moment. I know you're a big Mercedes fan, and you must be absolutely hating life at the moment, especially seeing that from what I've heard and what we're seeing, it looks like Red Bull are supposedly, for the next race, showing up with a no side pod. So, yeah, Mercedes, it looks like, may have almost nailed what they needed to do and then abandoned it, and now are kind of in free fall, I think is the best way to describe it, because they got worse and worse. They got worse last season. They got worse again this season. Um, yeah, bit of a shocker, and then an engine failure to cap it all off.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, obviously, with limited engines throughout the year, again, really bad scenario for Lewis to lose a whole engine unit straight away, especially in that sort of such a dramatic fashion of just sort of, going around a fast section of track and then boop, engine died. He said in interviews afterwards that there was no warning. That was the first thing, data-wise, any of them had any sort of inkling that the engine was going to go. So, yeah, very, very very strange. When people are playing around with setups and try and go for a dramatic sort of swing of a setup of some sort, it can throw you off. We've seen it many, many times. It can throw you off for like the whole rest of the weekend because you just can't seem to get that balance back. But the Mercedes, I mean, throughout this year so far, I know obviously we're only on race 3, but it seems to be that there's massive inconsistencies. And, like, it seems to be as well, sort of, even if you look right across the grid, not just Mercedes, but right across, it's when the car's inconsistent that they seem to struggle the most because, they could be doing really well in practice 2, like they've done a couple of times this year, and then nowhere in qualifying, nowhere in the race, suddenly dropping off practice 3. That's the thing, like, if it's consistently bad, at least you can pinpoint where the issue is. The fact that they're having sessions where it's starting to really come together, and whether it's temperature related, whether it's wind related, like Williams had a couple of years ago that really affected them, like heavy winds and stuff really unsettled the car. I don't know, but it seems to be like the inconsistency is really killing them at the moment, and it's that it's you almost need to solve that issue before then they can find the main issue that's actually making them slow. So I do fear for Mercedes because while all the other cars, yes, there's obviously a big chasm to Red Bull, even between Ferrari and Red Bull. Their cars seem to be more consistent throughout weekends. They know what they need to do with setup to kind of move stuff around. They don't seem to be doing quite anything so drastic as Mercedes seem to be doing. And therefore, with a consistent base, they can pinpoint the issues and really try and use the setup to kind of almost mask those issues for a weekend, and then while they're working on upgrades and stuff to bring in later in the season, like McLaren did around Silverstone time, and that's when their team can really push on. So I've got every hope as a Mercedes fan that they will come with a McLaren-sized upgrade very, very soon. I just, with the inconsistent car though, compared to what we saw McLaren last year, I can't see it. I can't actually see that on the horizon.
Continuing this trajectory, by the time
Yeah.
Audi, who are a big rival of Mercedes in the automotive world, come in,
Yeah.
it could be around their level at this rate. And George Russell will be absolutely hating life being at the back of the grid again. I hope it doesn't go that way. I'd like Mercedes to recover. Lewis is leaving, and you know what? I'm going to bring us on to our next man, George Russell, who finished 17th. I just don't think he's up to the job of leading that team. His performances aren't there. When it comes to a crunch moment, he has an accident like Singapore last year. I mean, granted, this time it looks like it was due to Alonso braking ridiculously early, which Alonso's been penalised for. So I won't blame him for this one. But yeah, George just doesn't seem to be able to deliver when he needs to at the moment, and he is the better Mercedes driver, granted, this year so far. But let's not forget that last year Lewis absolutely trounced him. So yeah, he's not got the consistency there. I just don't think he's ready to lead a team yet. And if you're Mercedes and you're losing Lewis Hamilton, you've got to be sitting there thinking to yourself, do we want to bring in a rookie alongside George? Is George able to lead the team? And honestly, I don't think he is. So then you've got to hope, if you're Mercedes, that Max Verstappen can be wooed away from Red Bull. Might save you there. If he's maybe some kind of set up god or like development king, who knows? Maybe it's been Max all along, not Adrian Newey. Or Fernando Alonso, something like that. I think they need a team leader in there, and I don't think George is ready for it. But that said, and again, he did great in qualifying with the car he had in comparison to Lewis. But yeah, shocker of a weekend for Mercedes. To not have any points at the end of this weekend is that's just worst case scenario any week for them, and yeah, just appalling.
Yeah, I think it's especially on a weekend where Max doesn't score. Everyone should be trying to maximize everything, and yeah, this is a shocker for Mercedes. It really was. Going back to your point, I mean, we know George is a very very fast, very talented race driver. I have noticed though that if you come and they had major engineers within the team leave. They had major engineers go to Red Bull powertrains. So you can't just pinpoint necessarily on one thing. But one of the other things that changed around that time was Bottas for Russell. Now, I'm not saying that was a wrong decision at all. I think teams have to look to the future, and George is that for Mercedes, which is totally fine. I might agree with you at the moment that can he lead a massive team like Mercedes on his own, or like you say, with a rookie? I tend to agree that at the moment it doesn't look fantastic.
Yeah, because he was the team leader at Williams, and he did what he needed to do for them. But
yeah,
Mercedes is a completely different kettle of fish.
He did, but it seems to be wherever George goes, the team seems to struggle with development. So I wonder maybe if more the issue is that Bottas was so strong at helping Lewis build his setups and develop the car. Maybe he had a driving style that was more in line with Lewis, so they could literally direct the car in one direction of, whether it's front heavy or sort of rear stable kind of car, that however Lewis wants it. Maybe Bottas complemented that more and George wants to go the other way. So there's this constant back and forth. Who do we tailor the car to?
Forget that Lewis has been complaining all that time with the no side pods, isn't it? He was the one saying, this isn't right, we need to change what we're doing, and they ignored him, and now look at the mess they're in. So, you got something there.
To be fair, you're always at risk when you ignore a 7-time world champion. That's never gonna go well. But yeah, Toto's as vocal as anyone else that it's going tits up. So, but he's a strong personality. I think they all are. They've got massive backing. Obviously, they've got the cost cap, so they haven't got any more money than anyone else. It's more a case of being able to, I think, to be fair, they need to try and rebuild their engineering team. Really.
They could do a Red Bull and try and get the most out of the catering budget.
Yeah, well, absolutely, absolutely. That's how they lured them away. Better catering. So, it's going to be difficult, but I think, you just gotta have your fingers crossed that if you're a Mercedes fan that they're going to turn it around. Who goes into that second seat? I think we need to address that. I think we mentioned it a couple of times already this season, so we'll probably come back to that more, at least second half of the season. We'll try and.
There's 3 options personally. If you're looking at experience to go alongside him, I think your options are Fernando Alonso.
Yep, agreed.
Or Carlos Sainz.
Agreed. I agree, and I think they should only be the option. I think they should be the only 3 options, if I'm completely honest. Because like you say, if you put a Kimi Antonelli in or someone like that, yes, they might be the next big thing, the next Lewis Hamilton, if you will. But it's quite clearly at the moment they need someone who's going to come in and help them develop that car. And you saw Alonso, how he picked up that Alpine and took it forward to Ocon's race win in Hungary. From a borderline back of the grid team.
Another name we could throw into the mix. Who you spoke of Alonso there, which made me think of Aston Martin, but then it wasn't Alonso who was there to develop that Aston Martin car, was it? It was another world champion, Sebastian Vettel. So maybe he is an outsider, a German as well, and I think he's signed up to do a World Endurance Championship race or the Le Mans or something. I saw something today in the news.
Yes.
So maybe someone like that who has proven that they can help develop a car, it could be an option as well.
I think they need that scenario because they used it very well with Michael Schumacher and Rosberg when they came into the sport originally before Lewis joined. They used that kind of development and really helped build the car from what was a kind of back of the mid pack car as Mercedes were when they first came in to that absolutely all dominating eight constructors in a row car. So
exactly.
I think that's
in 2010 to the Brawn car, which had no development in it at all.
Yeah,
for the next
none
year.
at all.
And then
Zero.
within 3 years, they made that the car that it was for the next 5.
Yeah, and they've
So
got
it could be good.
you've got big rule changes again in 2026. So I think they'll be targeting that as their major kind of, and they'll hopefully hit like they did in 2014 and really, be able to ace the new regs and really sort of maximize that. I can only imagine that's what they're punting towards now, and kind of almost giving up on this entire era now of F1 for the next couple of years, which is a shame, but. Hopefully they will still be able to bring stuff so they are semi-competitive at least.
Yeah, the fear is that everyone gives up on it this year, and then we have because obviously next year no one's going to develop next year's car because everyone's going to be looking at 2026.
It'll be
Whatever
very
this
minor
end of the
stuff.
season
Yeah.
is going to be what next season is. So if no one can catch Red Bull by the end of the year, we're going to have another year of Red Bull domination. Is the way it is. So hopefully someone can pull their finger out and do something, and maybe it'll be Mercedes. Who knows?
Maybe. Or maybe they'll ace next year and suddenly have a dominating 2025 and waste all their energy on that car and then suck at the new regs and go back to the back of the grid again. Who knows?
It's possible. Anything is
Who
possible in the
knows?
world of Formula One. It only takes
Absolutely.
a discovery of a new thing that's not against the regulations or something, and then
Yeah, they need another DAS. I'm not going to lie. They need something like that. Another F duct or, just... Yeah, otherwise it's going to be curtains. Yeah, it's going to be curtains on another season. They've got Japan really. If Japan's anything like the first 3 races, I think that's kind of they're gonna.
I think if Mercedes rocked up with DAS today, then they'd be allowed to keep it because they're not dominating. It's
I agree.
thing,
Yeah,
isn't it? But anyway, we spent enough time talking about Mercedes and their struggles. Let's move on to number 16, which was Esteban Ocon in Alpine. He had a great week last week. Well, not last week, 2 weeks ago, sorry. When in not Singapore, Saudi Arabia, he managed to finish behind Kevin Magnussen. He was the last of the lapped cars, wasn't he? I think K-Mag wasn't lapped.
Yeah.
Ocon was the car behind him. So So he did good last week, the week before last. But not so great this weekend. Qualified better than Gasly, but finished 16th. So not a great weekend again for him and for Alpine. And then Pierre Gasly, 13th. Again, not amazing, but it kind of matching what Ocon did in Singapore. And I'd say on a track that's slightly harder, so I think that it looks a bit better for Gasly than it did for Ocon, who was just in a DRS train. But another weekend to forget for Alpine, a team that expect to be getting points on a regular basis, not really making any steps forward.
I'd actually disagree with that to a little bit. To be honest, like if you think where they were in Bahrain, they were at the back by a long way, and the 2 of them were at the back. So that that we know they're not bad drivers. So that is an inherent car issue that they have, and there was very well reported about the issues that they were having going into the season. So to be honest, I think obviously Saudi's result and Ocon. I know Ocon was the last of the runners per se. I understand that, but Gasly being 13th. They've pushed ahead of Sauber. I think on a better strategy day or whatever, you could have got both cars ahead of the 2 Saubers. And from how far off the back of the grid, including the Saubers, they were in Bahrain, for me that shows a little bit of progress. Now, granted, I'm not.
I would just like to throw in here. I'm pretty sure both Sauber cars had another pit stop issues this week.
They did.
They were saying they're ahead of them, but I think one of them still finishing behind them. Even with that, is not best impressive.
I
do remember if Ocon had an issue. I do feel like one of them may have pitted for something stuck in a duct or something, so maybe that was Ocon. But I get what you're trying to say, but
it's just not. Don't worry. It's not a rosy situation by any stretch of imagination. I'm not trying to argue that Alpine are back. I'm not saying that at all. But how far off the back of the grid they were in Bahrain, at least when Sauber have massive issues with their pit stops again, one of them is able to capitalize and overtake them. That is, I'm clutching at straws for all you Alpine fans out there. I'm trying to find some positives, and I'm throwing you all the positive Ryan Reynolds style vibes at you, and it will hopefully turn around for you.
And I'm going to crush all your dreams and say that you were lucky to be ahead of the kicks, I'm afraid.
Yeah, kind of. Which brings us on nicely to the Kick Saubers, to be honest. In 15th with Zhou and 14th with Bottas.
Yes, remind me of their qualifying positions again.
I can do. Bear with me 2 moments. I don't think it was particularly impressive. Just qualifying their results. So we had Zhou starting 19th and last of the runners, and Bottas in 13th.
Yes, so I believe Guan Yu Zhou, didn't his front wing give up on him on his lap?
Yes, it did. You're
And
very
where was
correct.
Bottas, sorry?
13th.
13th. So first, I think 13th is actually pretty good. That means he got through to Q2, which for a
Very
Kick
good result.
Sauber is pretty good result. Guan Yu Zhou, unlucky. I've never seen a front wing just randomly give up on a curb like that before. That is actually a little bit worrying if you're a driver of one of their cars, that your front wing can just self-destruct like that a little bit. But yeah, they would have been hoping for better than 14th and 15th, considering their terrible pit stops again. I don't understand how we can be still talking about this. 3 races into the year, they still haven't sorted out their pit stops. Like, if there's
They haven't
a
had
part
a
that's
clean
not
race.
working, change it. Like,
Yeah.
something's not working. You've got to sort it. Because yeah, I feel like this is another opportunity of points they've missed out on here. You know, think about it. Bottas was 13th. 3 drivers in front of him have gone out. He'd have been 10th.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, missed opportunity for Kick again. How many times are they going to kick themselves
Hey.
for missing out on points and making stupid mistakes? I hope for their drivers' sakes they can get it sorted out. If I'm Guan Yu Zhou, I'm going to be hoping it's really soon because China's coming up fast. So
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. It's do you know what? I'm actually arguably more worried for Sauber in the current scenario than Alpine. I think Alpine have the backing behind them to turn it around. Granted, they've got further to come from, but I have more faith that Alpine will turn it around. Kick Sauber, do you know what? The team as a whole just seems like a giant placeholder for Audi. Like, it just seems like they're not doing anything. They're just literally, yeah, it's almost like they are simply existing so that Audi don't have to pay the 200 million, whatever it is, entrance fee, so that they can just take over that team. That's what it seems like. And they're just going to meander around and just, just exist, but not really do anything. And yeah, they haven't put a brand new rookie in the car to try and give someone new a platform to shine or anything. They've got the same drivers again, and I don't know, just nothing excites me. Don't get me wrong, the green livery is cool. I think it's okay. It looks a bit like something someone made on the game on career mode. It's a bit basic.
I was waiting.
I know. Mainly because I have made that accidentally made that livery, but it's just nothing tells me anything they're doing. With the shocking pit stop, they have not had an entire clean race of pit stops yet this season.
I genuinely am starting to look at it going, I think I could do a pit stop quicker. I'm not trained, but it's so bad that you start to look at it and go, hang on, is it actually? Are they making us look that hard, or is it really just not?
I don't want to offend anyone, because obviously it's very different in a racing situation with all the pressure of that on, the heat coming off the cars, the car approaching you at 60 miles an hour and stopping dead next to your kneecap. Granted, I'm not trying to say that it's the same scenario, but do you remember when we went to Silverstone in 19?
Yeah.
It was, and there was that pit stop simulation. You could practice on the gun.
Mm-hmm.
We all did pit stops on our own, and you had to do it on your own. So you had the gun, you had to take the tire off, you had to put the other one on, and the gun all yourself. It was just you. So more like a kind of F2 pit stop style, and we all did it quicker than Sauber seemed to be doing their F1 ones. With when you've got one guy putting the wheel off, you've got a guy on the gun, and another guy, 3-man team on each wheel. It's embarrassing for them. And like I said,
think that at this point, when they've had this happen 3 times now, you'd have the backup, everything there, ready just for the situation. But no, they're still running it back into the pit lane every time. It's embarrassing.
It is. I really hope they sort it out. I hope that prove me wrong. Please do. I love being proved wrong.
We like being proved
We
wrong.
do, absolutely. It's just meandering. It's just nothing. I don't see any excitement, and they don't seem like they've got like a will to improve either. It just doesn't seem. They're probably, it's probably very, very harsh, and they're probably working very well. They are working, I'm sure, very hard behind the scenes. But they've got to turn up with something special in Japan. Otherwise, yeah, they're basically gonna be the Minardi of this era. Just sat there. As soon as Alpine start like pulling their socks up. They're going to be really struggling at the back on their own. They're going to be like a Haas with Mazepin and Schumacher level kind of at the back. That's what I'm worried about for them. So, and thing is, that's going to make it more difficult for Audi because that's going to give them a further point back to start from. I'm sure they would have much.
Like not too long ago, I heard that Audi were thinking of pulling out entirely, and then they seem to have doubled down and gone, no, we're buying 100% of the team.
Yeah.
Out of nowhere, which really surprised me because I thought that they were looking at what's happening with the car now, and they were like, "No, we don't want this anymore." But
well, yeah, like I said, Audi are very, very big company, a part of the VW group. They'll have a lot of resources behind them. Certainly won't stand for situations like we've seen from Kick this year so far. So like I said, I'm sure it'll be all different, but it's not going to help Audi with them being right at the back, that far behind everyone else as a starting point. I'm sure they were hoping to have a midfield team like the Alfa Romeo was a few years ago to kind of develop from. But we will see. We will see. But yeah, they worry me at the minute, Kick Sauber. That's where my main worry is, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on though, so next in 13th was Pierre Gasly. We already covered that. So then we're going to 12th. Daniel Ricciardo. Daniel.
I'll let you take this one.
You're breaking my heart, Daniel. I want you to do well so badly, and it does not seem to be working at the moment for him. Looked like he'd done it in quali P10. I was like, yeah, boom, he's going through, and then lap time deleted. And when you watch back the replay, you're like, yeah, he's over the line. What I don't understand is why the team haven't immediately come on the radio and gone, you need to back out, you're going to have to go again. Unless the car was only fueled for one lap, maybe. But yeah, just not working for him at the moment. He's finished 12th. Realistically, I think the only car he's finished ahead of is Pierre Gasly, though. Everyone else had issues. Yeah, it's not a good weekend, especially your home Grand Prix. I really hope he bounces back. If the rumours are to be believed, he's been told he's got 2 races. Every driver, as soon as you're told you've got 2 races, you're really going to be not feeling that pressure anymore. It's a fantastic move from Red Bull. But yeah, and then just to rub it salt in the wound, they then said they're going to take away a practice session as well. Like, just put the guy out of his misery. If you don't believe him enough that you're not even going to give him a chance to do it, then just fucking pull the trigger now. Don't set him up to fail. It's you've got another car, you've got a Red Bull. If you want to give a Japanese driver a test, don't put the guy who's struggling, put it in bloody Max Verstappen's car. So I've no idea what helmet Marco's playing at there, but yeah, I feel for Daniel. We know he's got the talent. He's an 8-time race winner. He's won more races than Lando Norris ever will at this rate.
That caught me off guard. That one, that did. Yeah.
Well, yeah, no, I joke. I'm sure Lando will eventually get one, but we'll see. Yeah, I feel for the guy. He's talented. We know he's talented. He showed it last year in that AlphaTauri car. What they've done to that car since then to take it away from him, I don't know. I do wonder if with all of the drivers coming in and out and injuries and things like that, the car's been more tailored towards Yuki. Maybe that's helping Yuki a bit. Probably the first time a car's been tailored towards him. Keep in mind that Pierre Gasly's always been there kind of before, so maybe that's helping him a bit, but I would expect Daniel to still be doing better than this. Yeah, I really hope he bounces back at Japan because I love Daniel, and I don't think Formula One will be the same if we lose him. And yeah, Daniel, sort it out, please.
Yeah, to answer your question of what have they done, I think they spent all their time designing that livery and not doing anything to the car. maybe this is a hangover from him not properly recovering from the injury. Maybe it's like you say, maybe they're tailoring stuff towards Yuki. Who knows? I don't think we'd be having this conversation if Liam Lawson hadn't done so well. I think no. The problem for Daniel is that they know now that they have a very competitive young driver sat on the bench, and they've got a very talented, experienced driver in the car not performing.
Yeah,
and
they've guaranteed that other driver a race seat next year.
They have, so, yes. Yeah. So it's, I don't know. I feel for him, but it's kind of going back down like the McLaren. Like he really struggled against Lando on a car that probably was very tailored towards Lando. So, but he's always seemed to be, when he went into that Red Bull to start with up against Vettel, which would have been a car very tailored towards Vettel, he outdrove Vettel many races that season. So
same again when he went to Renault. He was absolutely the driver there, and
absolutely,
and just did really well with it. McLaren, he went again into a team where the car had been built around Lando. I just wonder maybe if a car is completely built towards one driver, he struggles a bit with it. But then, as you say, Vettel, it would have been built towards at Red Bull, sure. Yeah. So maybe Vettel has a more similar driving style to him,
Or maybe because Daniel does have quite an aggressive driving style. That maybe he could quite possibly be that the new modern era cars don't suit him. Because remember, he hasn't really done that well in the grand scale. He had a very good Mexican Grand Prix back from his injury last year. Granted, give him that, but it's quite strange with altitudes in Mexico. So that does mean that the cars. They always say the cars feel very different in Mexico. But other than that, back in McLaren and everything like that, ever since they moved over to this modern era of cars with the ground effect and stuff, maybe it's that doesn't suit him. Because he hasn't really done much since they brought that in, to be honest. So
I mean, he obviously had the win in Monza.
In the old style car.
Was that still the old style car at that point?
Yeah. That's 20. That's 21. When Max drove over the top of Lewis.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's a fair point. It's worrying times, but hopefully he can sort it out. And we won't be saying goodbye to him at the end of the season or midway through the season, which is even worse. Anyway, let's move on before I get too sad.
On a bright.
Let's move on to my other favourite driver, who also didn't have an amazing weekend, Alex Albon. Not what he would have quite wanted after taking Logan Sargent's car. He would have been hoping to at least get a point. Being just outside the points is a bit gutting for him, especially because he was running in that 10th place for quite a while. Then K-Mag got him towards the end of the race. I thought for a moment it was going to be saved for him when Fernando Alonso got his penalty, but he was just too far back. Actually, looking here, the Google results have not been updated, but Fernando ended up finishing 8th, I believe. Yeah, just a weekend to forget for Williams. Hopefully, they can bring a third chassis to Japan. We'll see. But yeah, hopefully both cars run well there, and that this whole new concept of car that they've changed pans out finally for them at Japan, because it's not so far, and you're sitting there going, maybe you should have kept with the straight line speed. But yeah, we'll see. Hopefully bounces back soon. One of the many names being linked to Red Bull as potential driver swap. I've heard that the Thai owner of Red Bull is really pushing to get Albon back in that car. So never know. Might see him there next year. Maybe
never know.
Take the fight to Max this time.
Yeah. Or maybe it might be Albon and Perez next year.
Or that. Or some miracle happens and I get an Albon Ricciardo lineup and I'll be in heaven.
That's true. I think you'll suddenly become the biggest Red Bull fan I've ever seen at that point, to be completely honest. Yeah, Albon, like I said before, we're very complimentary of Albon on this channel, and it's because he deserves it most of the time. Absolutely does. He's a class driver. He's proven it like over and over again. But like you say, it was just a bit of a shocker this weekend. And apparently, from what I heard from James Vowles when I had a quick chat with him, as I do on a regular basis. They're actually sending that Albon chassis back to their base in England to repair it and then send it back to Japan because they don't have and they won't have another chassis ready for Japan. So again, it's scary and on that sense.
This far into this, it's mental, absolutely mental.
Apparently, they took the risk of that to try and, whether it's budget related or whatever, but they're, as James has always said ever since he went in there, they're literally having to completely revamp all of the infrastructure at Williams because it was so outdated and compared to all the, especially the Mercedes garage he came from before. So he's just trying to upgrade all the systems, and that can't be a cheap exercise, So I think part of the issue maybe is he saved money on not having a spare chassis to maybe improve, like build a new wind tunnel or for hypothetically something along those kind of lines of really helping the team for the future, like investing in this infrastructure as a whole. However, that risk now they've needed that chassis now looks like a bit of a shot in the foot. But who knows, when they come to next year with a car that's fighting for podiums because of that infrastructural upgrade that they've had, we might be turning around and say it was a stroke of genius. Who knows?
I really hope that's the case, because to have
I really hope so.
Consistently in the points, let alone fighting for podiums again, would be absolutely wonderful.
It would be. So
hopefully they can turn it round, though.
Yeah, hopefully. And like I said, I think Joe Vowles is probably the best person to do it. He seems very logical. I like the way he did the same thing as Mercedes as well. Like, it seems to be his style that he will literally come on and do a video explaining, with his face right there, taking, full responsibility. He's not hiding behind anyone when he has a bad weekend. He goes in front of a camera and lays it all out. And he's so pragmatic and sensible with it, and wants to explain what happened and what the team are doing to try and improve the situation. I really respect him for that, and I have back when he was in Mercedes. I loved that feature that they used to literally sit down and talk through and go into quite technical detail that sometimes you kind of sat there like, are you not giving too much away to the competitors here? But I love the transparency that he has. It's just like, hey, look, we screwed up here. Our bad, that was my decision. I take responsibility. That was my on my head be it kind of situation, and I did it for this X, Y, and Z reason, and we'll carry on and we'll try and do better and learn from this. I love that. I wish more teams were that transparent, and it really helps with Williams being a sort of smaller team. They've got to do something like that to try and stand out from the rest, but. Yeah, I full kudos, and I have every faith that James can turn it around.
Yeah, fingers crossed that bears fruit soon than later. Okay, moving on to Haas, double points finish.
We're in points. Absolutely, we are in the points.
Brilliant turnaround. Feeling bad for Gunter Steiner, personally. This car would have been made under his leadership.
Yeah.
And he's not getting to see any of the benefits of it, so I feel a bit bad for him. But yeah, great weekend for Haas all round. Nico Hulkenberg racking up those points again. K-Mag there right with him this time. Putting themselves firmly up near the midfield in the championship, which is exactly where they expect to really be. So, yeah, good for them. None of us thought they'd be there at the beginning of the year, so proving us all wrong.
Absolutely. Love it. Absolutely. Yeah, no, 9th and 10th, great result. Especially when you think of the first two rounds. It was very much the top 5 teams. There's a big chasm between them and the bottom 5. So as long as all the top 5 finish, that's your points position's gone. Obviously Stroll not finishing meant that Haas nicked a point in Saudi Arabia. But other than that, everything else is taken up by the top teams. So when you have a Hamilton and a Verstappen dropping off, any of those bottom 5 teams needs to be in that prime position to take advantage. And we were talking about it before, that's where the AlphaTauri should be. That's where they should be striving to be, or Racing Bulls, whatever they are now. Alpines would be pushing for that position, but Haas are there. Haas have got those points, so fair play. I'm very, very impressed from where they've come from. And, yeah, more may. I don't really follow Haas that closely, completely honest. But fair play. I like being proved wrong, and like you said, our predictions are all they're going to be at the back. So yeah, I like being proved wrong, and here we are. Haas doing it.
Absolutely. And then one of the other teams you mentioned there, Racing Bulls. Yeah, Yuki Tsunoda in 8th. So again, showing
Seventh, actually.
oh yeah, 7th in the end, yeah, because he finished ahead of Alonso. Showing again, you need to be there to pick up when those other teams make the mistakes.
Absolutely.
It's crazy to think that if it wasn't for the 3 main drivers dropping out, that Fernando Alonso would have been out of the points this weekend. How crazy is that? But yeah, great job from Yuki. He's doing everything he needs to do. It's just a shame that I still don't think he's going to end up in that Red Bull seat. I think if Daniel doesn't pick it up, he's going to be safe in that seat he's in currently, I think. But if Daniel does suddenly pick it up, then he could be in trouble unless Alonso moves and then Aston pick him up for the Honda partnership or something like that. But yeah, Yuki showing finally that his all of his potential that we saw when he first came into the sport is still there, and he's delivering. So yeah, fair play to him.
Yeah, I mean, 95 seconds off the lead isn't fantastic, but you've got to be in the right place at the right time, and at the end of the day, he could be 5 seconds off the lead, or he could be 95 seconds off the lead. He's got 6 points in for the team this weekend, and fair play. Great drive. I think he was a bit unlucky in Saudi. I know he went backwards, but I think that was inherently part more to the the capabilities of the car as a whole. He qualified really well.
I'm actually going to stop you right there. I don't think it was to do with the car. I think it was to do with Kevin Magnussen cutting a corner and cheating. But
well, there was that element to it as well. But I mean, if if the car was better, he wouldn't have been behind Magnussen in the first place. Is my argument. So it's that kind of thing of. Yes, all right. Magnussen took some fruity lines through some corners. We'll admit that. But as a whole, I think the Racing Bulls isn't a great car. So for him to put it up into 8th, which then inherits 7th, fair play. Good effort. Again, I agree with you there. I don't think he's going to be pushing that Red Bull seat. If I'm completely honest, at the moment, he'd need to have a real big turnaround. I actually think, weirdly, the best person at the moment, the most exciting person to potentially take that Red Bull seat, isn't even driving the car at the moment.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
It's
Do you know what I mean? Like, generally, I think Liam Lawson at the moment has so much hype after how well he came in and did last year during Daniel's injury. I think he's actually probably in even more of a prime seat to take that Red Bull seat than either of the current driving RB drivers. So, yeah, crazy times.
It's a lesson I hope Red Bull have learned, though, from the past, and that they're not going to throw a rookie straight back into that team. I do think it's important that they let someone go in a bit lower and have a go before they do that. Otherwise, you're just going to end up with another driver like Gasly or Albon where they're going to cast them aside, and I don't want that to happen again. I'm quite fed up with Red Bull's approach that way with their top team. Even with the bottom team, I still feel bad for Nick De Vries. Yes, it meant Daniel got to come back, but I still feel bad for the guy that he finally got his go in Formula 1. He didn't even get really half a season. So, I don't really agree with how Red Bull run their junior program. But anyway, moving on from Red Bull, let's talk Aston Martin. So it was P8 and P6 in the end, I believe.
It was
for
indeed.
Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll. Lance Stroll finishing ahead of Fernando Alonso. Yes, it's because of a penalty, but still, let's give credit. He was close enough to his teammate that was possible. I think fair play to Lance this weekend. The 6th place is probably the best he could hope for by a long way. He probably was not expecting it. So yeah, great for him. Fernando, disappointing in my opinion. I don't like when drivers do dangerous stuff, and then even less when they try to bullshit about it. There is no way you break 100 meters earlier than you normally have been every other lap. I'm sorry, that's bullshit excuse, Fernando. Dangerous driving, deserved the penalty he got, and he's lucky that George is okay, because that could have gone a hell of a lot worse on a high-speed corner like that, especially with George ending up in the middle of the track. So, yeah, I fully agree with the penalty, and I think he deserved it.
I am a Mercedes fan through and through, but I'm actually going to disagree with you on this one.
Ooh.
I thought that penalty was very, very harsh, if I'm completely honest. It's not like George was right on his gearbox and then he broke 100 meters early. There was, yes, the closing speed was crazy, and it did. Yeah, what happened, and I'm sure the bulk of it was the air wash and stuff. But at the end of the day, Alonso doesn't control his air wash off the back of his car. It's strange because if you have a look back,
chased by someone, you don't break 100 meters earlier. Like to try and get a better exit, you just don't.
Let me take you back.
George off.
Let me take you back to Brazil last year when Alonso and Perez were fighting, and Alonso has taken that really weird line through the final corner and getting a ridiculous run off of it to stop Perez in that much faster Red Bull to overtake him down the massive sort of big straight that's not a straight in Brazil. Everyone turned around to him and said, he's a genius. Like, he's done the best defensive driving you could possibly ever imagine. Alright, and part of that was because he was doing a very different line to everyone else, throwing the other driver off, who just could not get a grip on what he was doing and understanding how he could attack him when Alonso was approaching the corner in such a different way to what you'd naturally would in what you'd normally see as a fast
multiple laps.
Over multiple laps, granted. But at the same time, there has to have been a first time he did that. There's got to be,
There's got to be a first time he did that, yeah, but he's taking a weird line. It doesn't necessarily mean he's breaking 100 meters earlier. Like, I'm sorry, I don't believe it. If this had been living Baku or something like that, and it was Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel, we'd be having a different conversation. I
don't think we would. It's Alonso was at that point. George was catching Alonso, right? Yes, okay. Alonso did that over multiple laps to Perez, but the first time Perez got up to the back of him and he did that, Perez was thrown off. You saw a wobble because of the difference in air, what he was expecting. And Perez, luckily, was able to collect it up and carry on and attack him multiple laps, and Alonso kept him back because he did this alternative line. Now, Russell catching Alonso only caught him on the last lap. Alonso only had one lap to do it, and he did it. Don't get me wrong, it was a scary accident, and I'm really glad George is okay, and it's gutting for George. It really is. Like, I'm gutted for him, and obviously the point loss for Mercedes, I'm gutted. I just, when you cast that, he was a good sort of 4 or 5 car lengths ahead going into that corner. He has the right to brake where he wants, and if that's to try and get a better exit, drivers do that all the time. So to me, it just seemed really harsh. You don't control. You control how your car exits the corner, but you don't have any control over how the air wash goes out the back. And you can't. In my brain, I can't get how he's been penalised for his air wash. It's like a lasting thing off the back of his car.
I think the main reasoning behind the steward's decision is you wouldn't normally brake that much there. Like,
agreed.
It's completely unexpected for someone to do that, and there would be no benefit other than to do what happened, effectively. So,
I don't think he could have predicted that George would have gone off like that.
It's brake testing. That's what it was. It was brake testing.
But it wasn't like, if you have a look at, like, even again, I don't agree with what Vettel was saying when he accused Lewis of brake testing one of the safety car. If you go back to that scenario, it's because Vettel was right up behind the back of Lewis, and yes, he did jump on the brake, but it's because he was trying to warm up his tyres, and as the leader, he had the right to do that.
Or Max and Lewis at Saudi.
Or Max, well, that was, I don't know, that was weird because he was supposed to be letting Lewis through, and they were both basically fighting for DRS line. Anyway, but they're all very different scenarios, granted. So they're not. There's not a consistent scenario in this picture. But George wasn't right up behind Alonso, and then he let off 100 meters before the corner, and George went into the back of him. It wasn't that.
Yeah, but
Alonso
it's a
was
flat out section when he's done it. Like,
no, it's not. You do come off the power for that section. You do. There's a gear change down. It is technically a braking section. So, and there was a good sort of 4 or 5 cars, and yes, he broke early, and there was a closing speed which would have put George off. But as part of a tactic of defence, but I am a big Mercedes fan, so this is probably very confusing for you. But I just
I know
I
you're a
think
big Mercedes fan, but I also know you're a bigger Fernando Alonso fan. So,
I wouldn't even. I just think,
I think we're
when
going to
you're
have
ahead,
to agree to disagree on this one. But
when
I'm
you're
just going to
ahead,
say the stewards agreed with me. So
yeah, they did. I just think when you're that far, when you're more than like 3 or 4 car lengths ahead, even if it seems like he's going a much slower way through the corner, he has the right to do that. If George then catches him and overtakes him because he's taken a stupid way around the corner, that's his own fault.
I am totally going to clip this when this happens on Thursday nights and just play this back to you.
Anyway, yes. So
Let's
there
move
you
on.
go. There's a bit of controversy for you.
Yeah, if anyone wants to put their opinions, put it in the comment below. We'd love
Please
to hear
do.
what
Yeah,
you
yeah,
think.
we do.
Are you Team Bowser or Team David? Let us know on the Fernando Alonso George Russell situation. It'd be interesting to see what the general public think. Moving on, so P5, Sergio Perez, terrible weekend. Most dominant car on the grid by a country mile. Another poor qualifying, got dropped down for blocking, but even if he hadn't been dropped down for blocking, he still wasn't on the front row where he should have been. Fought back, I think, from, 6th to 5th? Like, didn't really make much positions. Actually, I think he started 8th, to be fair. I think he started 8th, so he made up 3 positions. Actually, he didn't, because three people crashed out. So, yeah, terrible weekend for Sergio Perez. This is getting kind of used to the form we used to see from him last year again. If he doesn't bounce back again next week, we're going to be having the same conversations we were having last year, where it's like, well, who's replacing him? But yeah, he needs to be finishing second in a car that's that dominant, or at the very least, and that's when Max finishes first. If Max doesn't finish, he should be winning the race. That's why he's there. So,
that is exactly what I was going to say. I think this was a great opportunity for Perez with Max's mechanical issue, which seems to be the only way you can stop Max.
Leading the championship.
Yeah, exactly. Do you know what? I thought Perez had started to turn it around because 2 second place finishes this season. That is all Red Bull need him to do. That's perfect for Red Bull. That's all they need. But what they also need from their second driver is when Max does have an issue like this, and they don't have an issue throughout the race, as in, inherently mechanical issue, that the second driver is there in a dominant car, like Rosberg and Hamilton were, like Bottas and Hamilton were most of the time when Ferrari weren't as close. When something goes wrong for their lead driver, the second place guy is there to pick up the pieces and take the win. That is exactly what Perez needs to be doing. And granted, if it happened in the first 2 races, he was there to do that. But when it really mattered, when Max did have that issue, and they had that issue in lap 3, so there's plenty of time for Red Bull to turn all their attention onto Perez, and he's still in by far the quickest car on a circuit that has a massive now long flat out section where that Red Bull was continuously described by the other drivers as a rocket ship. He still only finished 5th place behind the 2 Ferraris and the 2 McLarens. McLarens having Mercedes engines, which are supposed to be 3-4 miles an hour slower in a straight line.
It's not good.
Like, what's going on? How much more on a plate do you need
holding
it?
on to that seat right now is that Daniel Ricciardo isn't performing, in my opinion.
Which luckily he isn't.
Yeah, if Daniel starts to perform again, he's going to be in trouble, I think. But yeah, a weekend to forget for Sergio Perez.
Baffles me. That's shock. That is the biggest shock of the weekend. That Red Bull with no issues throughout the race, no mechanical issues, in 5th. That is by far the biggest shock for me if this entire weekend.
Yeah.
So that's shocking. Absolutely shocking.
Absolutely. Moving on, 3rd and 4th, both McLarens. Lando Norris ahead of Oscar Piastri. Not a very popular decision by McLaren. McLaren is Lando's team through and through, and if Oscar hadn't realised it before, he has now. And I think this is another example of Lando Norris not being the team player. Uh, Oscar's let him through. It's his home Grand Prix. He's let him through to try and catch Charles Leclerc. He hasn't caught Charles Leclerc. You give the place back. Like, it's simple as. Like, I don't understand why he hasn't done it. It's a dick move, in my opinion. He's got third places coming out the wazoo at this point. It's all he seems to be able to achieve in life. You know, let Oscar have one. He would have been the first Australian to stand on a podium officially because Daniel Ricciardo had his taken away. So yeah, I don't understand the logic there. McLaren, I think this shows 100% behind Lando, and Oscar's their number two. And yeah, I feel bad for Oscar. I think he had a good weekend, played the team game, and he's not been rewarded for it. Yeah, I don't know why I've gone off Lando since Carlos Sainz left. He's just become a bit cocky, a bit arrogant, and is all about himself and less about the team or anyone else. So yeah, in my opinion.
Okay. I agree with you. I look back at Lewis and Bottas in Hungary, back in what 18, 19, whatever that is. I know I'm clutching at like older races.
Schumacher gave back a podium.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. At the end of the day, like that is the. It's the courtesy thing to do. They've very kindly moved out of the way. I know they were on slightly different strategies and whatever, so there was reason for doing that. But like you say, Lando tried, and I'm looking at the times now. Lando was, 6 seconds back off the lead. So that would have meant he was a good 2.5 seconds behind Leclerc, which means it's quite, he would have known he wasn't catching Leclerc in that last lap. Yeah. So, second half of that last lap, after all the DRS zones, he could have slowed down. He can't use the excuse that, well, I didn't want to slow down and Piastri go through and then lose a position to Perez, because
Perez
the gap between 20 seconds back behind Piastri. So there was no risk in doing it. It's just, part of, yeah, but McLaren didn't give him the call, as far as I'm aware, to do it. So you could argue, it's a two-way thing. I'm gutted for Piastri in the sense of, it would have been great for him. When you say it's his home race, he should. I don't really necessarily agree with that. Like, a race is a race. It doesn't, yes, it's nice that it's his home race, but at the same time, the points are points, whether they're at home or anywhere else in the world.
Realistically, Lando's not fighting for a championship this year. Like, let's be completely honest. He's not fighting for a championship.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's the team game. If Oscar's in fifth and Lando's third, I'm not saying he has to try to hold up Perez to let Oscar back through. It's just a common decency thing to do, and you've been let through and you've not managed to make a position. It's to just give the position back. But
I agree with you. We agree on this one for sure. It's whether McLaren see it as Lando is their best opportunity to. If they manage to bring another massive upgrade and suddenly become quicker than Red Bulls, Lando's probably going to be their best opportunity to fight for the championship, and maybe maximising as many points as they can now might make the difference. We've seen championships go down to the wire with less than a few points.
True, but a little bit of goodwill doesn't always hurt.
No, well, this is the other side of it. Like Piastri, might remember this next time and be like, oh, well, no, I'm not going to let him through because last time I did it.
Of Red Bull and Perez and Max and all that, of podiums and shit. So
yeah, plenty of people saying, oh, well, fine, I'm not doing that next time then. Mark Webber being a famous one with Vettel, saying that. So, yeah, it seems a bit odd. Everything seems so rosy at McLaren. So why upset the apple cart by just not having that nice little moment? So
also,
yeah.
Like, that would have been such a big thing for the Australian fans. Like, Lando would have been popular, Oscar would have been popular, McLaren would have been popular. It would have just been so good for the McLaren brand as well. I just don't understand the decision-making process there. So yeah, but a good weekend overall for McLaren.
Great
would not have
weekend.
been what they were expecting. So yeah, it's good in that regards. But yeah, I think the wrong driver was on the podium, and I think it was poor of McLaren not to make that call.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, cool.
That brings us to first place and second place, both the Ferraris. Ferrari 1-2. When was the last time we could say that?
Last Thursday. when Will was very upset.
That is very true. That is very true. But yeah, yeah, cracking result for Ferrari. Fred will
Yes.
be loving life, and Charles will be lining up to have his appendix removed soon, I'm sure. I did actually see a funny meme, and it was like all of the alphabetical of the drivers' names, and Alex Albon, Carlos Sainz, both had their appendixes out, and the next one's Charles Leclerc. So you never know. But yeah, what Carlos has done to bounce back and straight away win a race is incredible. Great comeback. I like Carlos. You could physically see he was struggling getting out the car at the end of it. He gave it his all. He deserved that win 100%. And I cannot believe, like, people were saying the year that Perez was out of contract that he hadn't got a seat, and I think Carlos is doing a much better job than Perez was doing. So, yeah, I can't believe that Carlos Sainz, the only driver to win a race other than a Red Bull in the last 2 years, is out of seat. It's madness.
Twice to do that.
Yeah, is the only driver other than Perez to beat Max. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's mental to me that he's not got to drive next year. He's got to be
So
getting
far,
a top seat.
it's got to be.
It's
Got
be
to have a race here.
surely.
Got to be.
I really hope he doesn't go to Sauber. He's a better driver than to drive that shitbox at the moment. In my opinion, he needs to be either in the Ferrari, the Aston, or the Merc. Those are the three seats I can see him in, depending on other moves and things like that. But yeah, like if Fernando Alonso leaves Aston Martin, that's the driver you're bringing in. You're bringing in Carlos Sainz at the moment. I don't see anyone else on the grid that you could think to bring in really. Yeah, it's incredible to me that he's without a seat.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. Totally agree with you. It's a phenomenal result for Carlos Sainz. Also, arguably, if he had been driving in Saudi, Carlos Sainz would be quite comfortably leading the World Championship right now.
Yeah.
On like basic form at the moment. Like you'd assume for argument's sake, he would have come third or fourth in Saudi if the Red Bulls had held the 1-2. So, yeah, I can't believe he hasn't got a drive. But either way, we'll focus on that second half of the year again when the silly season all starts. But yeah, great. He's doing everything he needs to do to get a good seat for next year. If the rumors going around at the minute that Max is going to go to Mercedes, Alonso is going to go to Red Bull, and then you're going to have Sainz go to Aston. Is the little merry-go-round?
Aston and Sainz goes to the second.
Or yeah, quite yeah, maybe.
I don't know. That'd be cool to have an all Spanish lineup though. That'd be cool.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
Leclerc. I don't know. Leclerc, he got the fastest lap. But he just didn't look on Carlos's pace all weekend, to be honest. Like, don't get me wrong.
His car settled, could he? He was having a few issues.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. And he had the same sort of issue in Bahrain as well. So whether he's just struggling with this kind of getting to grips with this car, maybe the car. I don't think they would have made the car. I'm sure they would have tailored the car or tried to tailor it to Charles, but maybe they've accidentally made it more friendly to Carlos because Leclerc seems to be struggling a lot more with it, and even Ollie Behrman didn't seem to have the same sort of struggles with it getting in. So I don't know. I'm a little bit surprised by Charles, but don't get me wrong. Second place is still a phenomenal result, so I'm not taking anything away from that. I would be interested to see what happens in the next sort of 3 or 4 races between the two and how the two compare, because we normally do see a bit of back and forth with Ferrari. Whenever Sainz does tend to do well, Leclerc does tend to step up his game. So that will be interesting to see if we can. But yeah, I think Sainz has got his number at the minute.
I agree. I would be interested to see what happens at Japan. I hope that we have a good race between all of the drivers, apart from Max, who I hope DNFs. But yeah, just because I want to see another race, really. Like, this one was a good race, in my opinion.
Yeah,
looking just quickly at the results of Japan last year, Charles Leclerc did finish 4th and Sainz 6th, so it does look like Charles is maybe a bit more comfortable with that track. McLaren's were 2 and 3, so maybe another strong weekend for them as well. Who knows? I'm going to go with probably a Max Verstappen win, a Sergio Perez second, and Carlos Sainz third. Although saying that, Sergio Perez last year didn't finish the race. So who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? What do you think? What would you give your top three?
I agree with the people you've put up there, but I think it's going to be a Max Carlos Perez. 1, 2, 3.
That would be nice.
I think Carlos is in great form. I think he's in great form, so I think that's going to be the way around.
Off, isn't he? So he's going to be going that extra bit just to try and.
Yeah, and I have every faith that Leclerc will probably finish fourth, or like really pushing Perez for third as well. So, yeah, like I said, I think Max will disappear as long as he gets pole. So that's kind of and there's no mechanical issues for him, which the chances of that happening twice in 2 races is. Well, it's just not my birthday at the minute, so it's probably not going to happen. So, and then maybe the McLaren's 5th and 6th as a guess.
Be interesting to see. I'm thinking it'll be a Ferrari. I reckon we're going to have a 2x2 basically. I reckon it's going to be the Red Bulls, the Ferraris, and then I think it's going to be the McLarens after that. So yeah, that's the way I kind of see it. I'm going to go out on a limb and say Lewis Hamilton will finish ahead of George Russell next week. He's always liked Japan, so I don't know. I've got a feeling.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah, it's more of an old school track, isn't it? Yeah. It's a good shout. Do you think they'll be in the points though?
Well, that is the big ask, isn't it? I'd be very surprised.
You're saying Lewis ahead of George, but that might be 11th and 12th at this rate.
Yeah, let's hope not for their sake. I think the big question is, will Williams bring a second car, or are they going to have to enter just one again? Hopefully, for their sake, they can. They've got 2 weeks to sort it out. Surely it doesn't take that long to get. Actually, to be fair, freight to Japan could take quite a while. So
and back from Australia, a whole chassis back to Australia to England, then back to Japan. I mean,
tight.
Yeah, I mean that's very tight. Bear in mind you have to.
How long it takes them to fix it as well.
Yeah, I mean, and you're looking at. They wouldn't have been able to get the chassis away until probably Saturday when they made the call. And getting the chassis back, and then realistically they need to be there setting up on Tuesday, Wednesday. Granted, the chassis can probably arrive Wednesday, but realistically, that's the absolute latest it can be arriving because they've got press days Thursday, building the car Thursday, and then it's practice Friday.
Not
so
weekend, though, is it?
Not as far as I'm aware.
So they would still they could potentially miss like first and second practice building the car if they had to, but. Yeah, and the real question will be, are they going to give Albon back his old broken one, or are they going to force it onto Logan? Who knows?
Depends if the wheels like...
Dear. Anyway, thank you very much for joining me tonight, buddy. And I hope everyone at home has enjoyed watching this, and if you watch it in the future, do still comment and let us know. It'd be interesting to know what your thoughts are on everything that we've said. We will be racing on Thursday night, 7:30 on Twitch. So please come and check us out there. I'm Umilius. He's Bowser_49, 49, not 39.
49.
49. I don't know who Bowser_39 is, but he almost got some.
Yeah, don't follow him. No, don't follow him.
But yeah, come check it out. Have a laugh with us. It's going to be good fun. We're actually being teammates for a season. That's not happened in a long time. So we'll see if we.
And now we're not falling out so much. It's great.
Yeah, we're not doing a McLaren. You see, that's what we're working.
Yeah,
we
have.
No, come see if we can beat Wibsy in the Red Bull with Perez. But yeah, thank you very much.
With
for
a Perez.
With a Perez, yeah. I mean, actually, more to the point, see if you can tune in and see if Perez can win, even though he's got Wibsy. Sorry, Wibsy, if you're watching, mate.
Ouch.
We love you, really.
We do love you, buddy.
But yeah, anyway, thank you very much for joining us, everybody, and bye for now. Bye.
Bye.